We are lucky to be with Zach Klein, amazing entrepreneur investor. He's the current CEO of Dwell, a design platform for architects, designers, and enthusiasts. His past endeavors include being the founder of DIY.org and creating cabin porn phenomenon. He's an investor at Wild Growth and Kickstarter, venture partner at Hounder Collective and Advisor, and everyone knows he's also the founder of Vimeo. Today we'll be talking about build the company that you wouldn't sell. And it's a super interesting conversation because Zach has sold, obviously, Vimeo and now has since been in DIY.org for 8 years and now has started a new venture with Dwell. And so during the conversation, feel free to hashtag Zach via Slido, and please share your learnings via Twitter using the hashtag Giants. We'd love to see your engagement, and I'll be answering your questions throughout the chat. So let's kind of get started.
Yeah, real quick, if we don't get to your question during the session, obviously feel free to ask me on Twitter later, and I'll get to those every one as soon as I can.
Thanks, Zach. You did a talk back in 2013, and it was roughly on this talk, and there are a few really powerful moments that you shared. And obviously, when building a company, it's really just a collection of people that you can bring together. And so I wanted to see how you thought about bringing those people in, and why should they pursue to work for the company that you started.
Yeah, so that talk in 2013 was at the Do Lectures, which, by the way, is an amazing event. I was really fortunate to be invited to speak there, and they assigned me a topic. They asked me to speak about exit strategy, and it was a completely unironic invitation, and it really it triggered me because it reminded me of a really painful experience in my life, which was that I sold Vimeo. My partners and I sold Vimeo way before we wanted to sell Vimeo, but we were 23 when someone offered us, more money than we'd ever considered, and I was still at an age where like flying in an airplane was cool. I was so young, and so to process going out of like college debt and having disposable income for the first time it felt like an extraordinary achievement, and I felt like I had been conditioned my entire life that like one of the most glorious things you could do as an entrepreneur would be to sell your company. Like that's the end game. And it wasn't until I did it and I grew up a little bit more that I realized just how dissatisfying that transaction actually was, because I think the most glorious thing you can do as an entrepreneur is build a company that creates jobs that people love, that creates a product or service that fundamentally makes the world a better place, that continue somehow to recharge your passion every single day, and it gets you excited about going to work and collaborating and being creative. And we had done that at Vimeo. We had 100 people who loved their jobs. It was in a highly creative place, and we gave that away for money without really possessing the wisdom or experience to know just how valuable these intangibles were. And so now, that's just where I am in my life. I think that, sometimes selling a company is the rational thing to do. But it's no longer for me the pinnacle of success. Pinnacle for success is a sustainable company that I love working at, that employs collaborators that love being there.
You have spoken about the importance of having fun. How do you sort of build that from the outset for your employees?
Well, so another facet of that mantra, build a company that you wouldn't sell. A big part of that for me is it's sort of a litmus test. Is that there are a lot of good business ideas that look good on paper. But I think that fundamentally the people that tend to win are people who have the competitive advantage of passion. If you have two entrepreneurs, all their things being equal, but one is truly passionate about the challenges, like truly the challenges themselves are exciting to them. they will win. And so what I've realized is that rather how you generate fun is that everything in life has challenges, everything. And you have to pick the things that has challenges that you love. It's not the success that you need to love. It's the challenge, because those will never go away. And it's those things that stimulate extraordinary experiences that generate fun.
In the face of, I guess, those challenges, how do you ensure that you're a good leader, and how do you help people live their best lives?
How do I help people live their best lives? I mean, so, for me, I will say that, like, I'm not sure that I'm a natural born leader. I'm a hustler with good taste who loves working on fun stuff. And I often fail as a leader. And I found that the most, the thing I have to exercise and keep practicing is humility, to admit where I'm still learning myself as a leader, and to invite feedback from my team to help me grow, to build a culture that embraces vulnerability, that celebrates maintaining a beginner's mind, and discourages anyone from leading or dominating by ego. And that's generally the DNA that I strive towards, often fail at, but is what I'm trying to instill in companies and into the lives of the people that I work with.
I'm sure you lead by example when doing that. Are there any practices that you've set up, or I guess parts of the culture where that makes it really easy for people?
Tell me about that. Talk to me around that. I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
So at the moment, you were earlier talking about joining Dwell, and 3 months in, the coronavirus has hit. How can people begin, or start with a beginner's mind when so much is going on? How have you set up, I guess, constructs around the company where people can kind of, I guess, embrace their work
Sure.
with that lens?
So I think one of the things that's important to me is helping people appreciate that all of us, to some extent, have been conditioned to think that we're only good at a few things, and that our ability to learn new things, decreases over time as we become older and we get, further from a youthful mind. And we're often taught that some things are diametrically opposed. If you like art, then you can't possibly like science. And I like to think about all of those things as types of literacy that are all on the same level, that we're all capable of. Just someone needs to create a safe space for us to learn and fail at those things. So, in the companies that I lead, I try to encourage literacy, creative literacy, financial literacy, even legal literacy, product, for everyone. So, for example, right now, just like virtually every company on earth, the pandemic surprised us, has completely devastated our plans for the year. We're facing some financial challenges, just as many people are, and we need to respond to that. The only way that, like, my instinct to lead through that moment is to be completely forthright with everyone at every level in the company as to where we stand in every category financially, to show them the variables that matter, to plot that graphically so they can see, this impact, and, trust them to take that data and think about it and volunteer ways that they can own part of that. Really trust my collaborators enough to want literacy for a particular topic that's sometimes outside of their scope of responsibility.
Love that. So much of the company that you build is dependent on you and your co-founder or co-founders. For those that are looking for a co-founder, what should they be looking for?
So people often ask me what's the advice that I would give to an entrepreneur who's just starting out. And the first piece of advice I always say is talk about your idea to anyone who will listen. What a lot of first-time entrepreneurs do is they squat on their idea because they're possessed with paranoia that if that idea gets out, someone else is going to steal it. The reality is that your idea is on its own is invaluable. It's probably not truly unique, and what's unique is the scaffolding you put around that idea to explore it and to begin building towards it. And I think that whenever I'm possessed by something, I try to talk to as many people about it so I can see who's attracted to it. And usually in that process, I meet someone else who's passionate for that idea. And I'm looking for someone who is, we're bonded by a passion for that same challenge, but they offer some sort of skill set that's complementary. I always encourage everyone to find. I think co-founders are important and essential, and I'm reluctant to start things without them. I think that you need a check and balance for your own psychology and weakness. You need constant feedback while you're learning, and it's hard to do that in a vacuum without someone observing you.
There's some really amazing questions in Slido, and keep them coming, everyone. Greg Denton has spoken about he loves your past emphasis on building something that you don't want to sell. How have you balanced this with the need for growth?
Well, how do you mean? How does selling relate to needing growth?
I guess by the need for growth, how do you make sure that you can stay in touch with the values that you're talking about, and at the same time grow at the pace and scale that someone might need to capture the opportunity that's at hand?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of nuance there. Like when I say, and I want to be clear, the mantra "build a company you wouldn't sell" is intentionally provocative. What I mean there is, I do not mean don't sell your company. First of all, what I'm saying is only pursue ideas that are ideas that you could imagine working on for a very long time horizon, because that is a forcing function for helping you select amongst everything you could work on the thing that you are that uniquely qualifies you to go the distance, because going the distance is often what it takes to get over that like hump of doubt and overwhelming challenge to the greener pasture. Obviously, along the way, there are numerous tactics that one might need to deploy in order to scale up to that challenge, including taking capital from outsiders. I don't discourage that, but I do caution people to be wary of giving away so much of the cap table that your ability to sort of have autonomy over your passion is jeopardized.
And that's a really interesting point. At the moment, some companies might have less than 12 months of cash. They might need a raise. How would you kind of deal with someone who comes to you with a term sheet that you aren't entirely on board with, or but you perhaps don't entirely trust them? I guess it's obviously dependent on the circumstance, but I'd love to get your thoughts on how do you kind of prioritize?
Yeah, it's not simple. Really kind of interesting story. I started DIY 9 years ago. 2 years ago, I sold it. And this was something that I imagined I could spend the rest of my life working on. I had to sell it because I was having although like we had a pretty modest like recurring revenue from subscriptions, it was not so much revenue that I could really continue to operate competitively while employing 20 people in San Francisco with swelling labor costs. And I saw an opportunity to sell to someone that I thought would be a safe harbor for the company and would commit to it, invest in it, and would ensure its legacy. And 6 months later, that company sold itself to an even bigger company. And 3 months ago, I just bought DIY back. So it's been
wow.
It's been full circle. Look, if there's no clean answer to the question that you asked. No judgment. Sometimes, like, you've run out of gas. You just need to like land the plane, and sometimes money's money, and it's necessary, and you make those trade-offs. And I can't possibly, I don't know if it's helpful to begin speculating what those conditions are that you need to take money from someone you don't trust. I think it's obvious that like you try to avoid that as much as possible. It's generally a bad idea to take money from sources that aren't aligned with your style of leadership, your vision, your passion, and the outcome that you desire. I mean, those are, I think taking money and losing control of something you otherwise love is often a negative outcome.
That sounds like a reasonable argument. I want to sort of rewind back to some of the early days at both Vimeo and DIY, and just sort of probe you on how design has helped you with the first sort of 365 days within the first year. How did design help you? Yeah,
so for a long time in my career, I didn't think of myself as a CEO or an entrepreneur at all. I thought of myself as a designer. And what I now understand about myself at that time was that, like, I think what I was really expressing was that, like, I loved how designers have the power to change the world around them so quickly. It's just like, it's really a mentality that equips you to adjust anything, whether it's bricks and mortar or pixels. You can fundamentally just change anything if that's how you trained your mind. And so I obviously, having design skills in the first year of your company allows you, it gives you the skills to, possibly even go so far as to build product that ships. So it's like you have less dependency on third parties to help you materialize the thing that you're imagining. It's a form of prototyping. And just, like I said earlier, I think design and creativity is a literacy that virtually everyone in this room is capable of possessing some skill for, if they made it a priority. It's not an elite talent. It's just, some people had the circumstances that allowed them to learn it at an earlier age, and so they get assigned the quality of being having a talent for it. Sometimes that's the case, but it's not elite or exclusive, and it's a highly useful skill.
How did you marry design with the earliest set of customers? What was your relationship like?
Yeah, so interesting anecdote about Vimeo. So Vimeo preceded YouTube. The difference was that Vimeo was a nights and weekends project between myself and my business partner at the time, Jacob Lodwick. We were part of another company. We were partners in another company that ran this website called College Humor. So we'd work on College Humor by day. At night, we would go work on Vimeo, and it was just our own personal social video world. We were truly building it for ourselves and our best friends. We were paying for all of the bandwidth out of our own pockets. And so whenever someone would have a video that was popular, we would have to we'd have to shut the video down. We'd have to delete the video, because on Vimeo we couldn't afford for videos to be popular. And so meanwhile, YouTube on the West Coast was heavily funded. There was a very sophisticated venture capital system there. Their advisors, their investors were telling them, like, put every video on the internet, like, ignore copyright law, just like grab territory, go for viral hits. And Vimeo and YouTube started to separate. So then we carved out a niche, that's become a sizable niche in the video market. But we emphasize quality, we emphasize personality, we emphasized creativity, and that became our sort of our calling card. We were the first to introduce HD video on the internet, I think in the English speaking world. and that was in the pursuit of quality and creativity, which was a really strange outgrowth of this really early condition of just not having enough money to fund its popularity.
Wow, that is amazing. I had no idea. How, as a team, like, what were some of the moments when you started getting more focused on, I guess, the quality? Was it purely that, wow, we need to go smaller because this is so expensive? Or was it just a matter of, like, we love the type of videos that quality can bring?
You know, I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier, something about passion. I mean, I think in a way we were blinded to the possible opportunities because we weren't thinking about Vimeo as a business, and frankly, very few were. Like at that time, and we this was in New York City. There was a very small venture capital like network there. We took it to venture capitalists who told us that video sharing was not a business, and they convinced us. And we didn't think it ever would be. So for us, it was far less about pursuing a strategy of what was the best business and more about creating, placemaking on the internet, creating a place where we wanted to be. And so I think we weren't modeling for growth. We weren't modeling for profit. We weren't modeling for virality. We were trying to create a space that was entertaining and hospitable. And, everything else flowed from there.
Wow. How did you get the most out of, and even now, how do you get the most out of creative people?
I'm afraid to repeat myself, but the surest way is to create a space where failure is celebrated. So when I'm doing one-on-one performance reviews, I go to great lengths to interrogate someone about the failures that they've experienced since the last time we spoke, and to really think deeply about how that positively impacted them somehow. You need to create a place where people feel comfortable to go out on a limb, where people won't feel criticized or ridiculed for trying something. That creates a space where creative minds wander and take chances. So, just obviously that isn't like, that needs to be controlled somehow, because like you can't have a company that's just everyone wandering, in their own direction. So simultaneously in that environment, I'm, and this isn't nothing new. I'm always emphasizing, like we discussed before about financial literacy, I'm always emphasizing what are the most important things that we can impact as a group in the company in this particular period, so that there's some focus for that creativity. So people are actually problem solving, not just, working in a vacuum.
Well, the beauty of you repeating yourself is that people can learn what are some of the principles that are working for you time and time again. And that seems to be like a constant thread that has really worked for you in the companies that you built. I wanted to switch back with 6 minutes left, and there is one that is getting constantly upvoted. And the question is from Karim Ford Sarin, and the question is, what was the most difficult point you had to overcome personally when building Vimeo? Hardships, rejection, and failure are often overlooked in Q&As.
I would say the hardest thing was dealing with my partnership. And this is, there is no shortage of these stories. Sometimes this stuff spills out into the public, but it rarely does, because it's usually in everyone's best interest to just sweep everything under the carpet and to write an idealized biography of how a company came to be and how success was found. But Vimeo was founded by 4 of us. We were ages 22 and 23. We were, while ambitious and precocious, we were immature and had, poor skills for communicating and being vulnerable and, helping each other through hardship. And all 4 of us were living together. So it was just like, it was a pressure chamber of being always on, of being always competitive. and, you know, constantly stacking yourself up against the other, you know, who's contributing the most. It's, you know, to some extent, I don't know that we ever could have made any, like what we made without those conditions, because they were just so supremely extreme and like and competitive. But and you know, and I did feel like I was in a marathon, but it was also a lot to endure. You know, it just and I think that's the case for a lot of entrepreneurs. It's just managing the relationships with your co-founders. You know, when like the stakes are so high, there's so much stress. There's often so much personal sacrifice in the early days of a company. You know, like, you know, because the opportunity cost for you working on a company, especially as much time as it requires, means time away from your spouse, your children, the things you love doing, the things that make you healthy. And so like a resentment begins to bottle up because, you know, everything you're giving comes at an extremely personal cost. So, you know, managing those emotions is, you know, something that I wasn't very prepared for, especially when I was younger. And still at this age, I'm, you know, I still, you know, it's something I still have to practice at.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing your honesty and insights there. Another question from Mike in Slido is, hi, Zach, other than capital, what main qualities do you look for in an investor when seeking the right one to work with?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not like one of those Warren Buffett geeks. Like I don't own stock in Berkshire Hathaway, but I don't think I'm a great investor. You know, I have like some smart friends and a good network, and every once in a while, like one of them nails it and it makes me look smart. But you know, I don't think I'm particularly equipped to be a great investor. And one of the reasons why is because I have this problem where I immediately like move into the idea and make it mine, and I become obsessed with what I would do. And then all my feedback becomes kind of self-centered, be like, I'm imagining myself as a CEO and like what my passions and interests are in the problem. And a lot of my feedback is coming from that direction. And then I heard Warren Buffett say that like, I invest in companies not because they're going to be successful with my participation, but because they'll likely be successful without my participation. And you know, so I'm looking for investors who truly have sized up like just how deep my well of passion is, how they respect that, and they what they're trying to do is to help me manage all those things I've previously discussed, my stresses, my challenges, you know, to keep me healthy, to keep me positive, and you know, just to keep my my eye forward. You know, those have been the best investors in my life.
When you were selling Vimeo and DIY, were there sort of helpful traits that the investor had there?
Say that again. You just broke up for a second.
I was just saying, when you were selling your companies, were those traits still the most helpful, or was there another set of traits that became really important to you in that time?
When selling my company?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean, selling a company is just like, that's a totally different thing. You know, it just becomes like the work of mercenaries and you know, attorneys. And I actually find that kind of like sportsmanship uncomfortable. I don't, you know, I don't like to negotiate so like so plainly about my company as though it's a commodity that has no emotional value to me. So you know, yeah, of course, I love investors and advisors who can like manage to pull that off on my behalf, because you know, that's just something that like I shy away from.
I want to. I'm just conscious of time. We've just closed up on the dot. Thank you so much for your time for the last half an hour.
Yeah,
it was so refreshing to hear your thoughts and opinions on how to build a company that you wouldn't sell. Is there anything, or where can everyone find you in case? What's your Twitter?
My Twitter is Zach Klein, ZACHKLEIN. Right now, I've caused quite a stir because there's a local golf course in San Francisco that's shut down, but they're letting people walk on it. And I took a walk on it, and it blew my mind. Just gorgeous forest, fields of nasturtium. It was like a surreal experience. And I suggested on Twitter that maybe it should be a park all the time. And then Malcolm Gladwell retweeted that, and now the entire the world's golfing Illuminati is after me. So anyway, if you see me slinging arrows at golfers, I mean no offense. I enjoy golfing. I just value publicly available open space more.
Oh wow, that's awesome! I can't wait to see that beef. In the next giant session, we've got Tom from Twitch talking about product management strategies for founders. It's the last session. Everyone who's still on the call, make sure you don't miss it. It's going to be pretty awesome. Again, thanks so much, Zach, for your time. You're a complete legend, and thank you.
All right, take care. Bye, y'all.